So hello everyone, welcome to our live demo that we're doing now. So again, this is part of our APCA Chef Online. So just to inform you what our APCA Chef Online is, it's a program which we developed, especially during these days where travel's a bit hard and not everyone can come to our school, where we'll be putting all of our program that we normally teach in our 9 months onto the online platform of APCA Chef Online. Back on. Again, like I was just saying, this is a good point. This is a live demo just to show you guys what we're doing, how I teach the program, and the kind of products that we make. But with our APCA Chef Online, all of our videos are pre-recorded, edited with music and effects with the recipes on the screen for you. So this will just give you a little bit of seeing on how we teach the class and the kind of products we make. But if you see our online videos for APCA Chef Online, everything is already there, available at any time of the day, and professional quality. So pardon for the live demo part, but the quality that we'll be getting on the APCA Chef Online, as far as video-wise goes, we should not have any kind of problem. So what I'll be showing you today is a classic pastry called Saint Honoré. Now, Saint Honoré can be made from a few different things, but one of the most basic is going to be choux pastry. So we're going to make a choux pastry, small little choux, and then we're going to have them filled with chocolate. So Saint Honoré, the base can be made from puff pastry, sablé breton, or even a tart. So I'll show you with the sablé breton base, then I'll show you how to make choux pastry. I'll show you how to make the chocolate ganache for the choux pastry, as well as I'll show you how to put the crackling and bake the choux pastry. Speaking of which, in the last freezer, I have the ganache going to bring it. So we're going to start first by making the sablé breton, which is going to be the base for our Saint Honoré. So here we have sugar, baking powder, flour, egg yolks, and butter. So to start making our sablé breton, we're going to use what we call creaming method. Now, whenever you see these 5 ingredients, we're going to go with 2 different methods, either creaming or rubbing. Rubbing method would be more for a tart shell, where you put all the dry together and then break up the butter inside the dry, make a crumbly texture, and then add the liquid. Creaming method, we'll do the butter and the sugar, cream these 2 first, incorporate some air and a light texture before adding the rest of the ingredients. So we're going to start first by putting our butter inside. Along with our sugar. Now I'll be mixing here using the stand mixer, but during each step I'll take it out and I'll show you guys what the steps are looking like before I continue. So we're going to use a paddle attachment. The paddle attachment is the one that we always use for creaming and rubbing method. It's going to incorporate air, but better for stiffer products like this. A whisk will also incorporate air, but this is going to be more stiff, so it's not suitable for a whisk, and the butter tends to stick into the whisk as well. So we're just going to put on the paddle attachment. All right, it's not my first time using the paddle. Okay. And we're going to start creaming the 2 together. So because we have baking powder inside, we don't need to incorporate a lot of air during the creaming method, but we just want to help the sugar dissolve slightly and incorporate just a little bit of air. So sometimes we're using creaming method for a product that doesn't have a leavening agent like baking powder or baking soda. Those are the cases where we'll cream the butter and sugar very light and fluffy. Because we'll get some leavening from our baking powder, we don't have to make the butter super white and fluffy, just a little bit till it loses that yellowish tinge of the butter. So we just cream just for a little bit. My dry ingredients I have are pre-sifted. You always want to use sifted ingredients so you don't form lumps inside. And my egg yolks. When we're doing creaming method, we want our eggs, whether it's egg yolks or whole eggs, to be at room temperature. If they're very cold, when I add them into my butter later on, what's going to happen is it's going to start to crystallize the butter, and then my mixture will look split. It won't emulsify very nicely. you can see our butter here is slightly lighter in texture. It's not very white and pale. We don't need to incorporate a lot of air because we have the baking powder inside, but we do incorporate just a little bit. Now, before we had a bit of the audio issue, so I just want to say again, if you do have some kind of questions, we will be posting this on our YouTube channel, as well as our APCA Chef Online Facebook. So you'll be able to ask the questions there, and then we can come back and we can help you with the questions. This is the same thing that we do for our subscribers as well. In our subscriber Facebook, we have a post for every single one of our topics. So when our students have questions for what they watch, they go on our Facebook page and they ask the questions. And all the chefs, we spend time every single day that we come on there and we answer the questions and help you out. So just like that, you'll be able to ask the questions. So if you do join our APCA Chef Online, we don't just give you the video and just leave you sitting there. We're very constantly active and interacting with you. We have some of the students we have now, they post a picture of what they're making. We help them have some products, and we just overall like to encourage our students. So I'm just gonna take some of the butter off the paddle. I'm gonna scrape down the bowl. I'm gonna put it back onto the stand mixer, and then I'll start gradually adding in my egg. So on a slow speed, I have my room temperature egg here. I'm going to add in a little at a time. I'm gonna let it emulsify. And then I'll continue adding the egg. Always before we add every single ingredient, especially when we're using a paddle, because it tends to spread the ingredient all over the bowl. We want to scrape down. If you ever bake some cookies at home or some product where you have 10 nice cookies, and you have that one cookie or one loaf of banana bread that's just sliding down, that's normally because you didn't scrape your bowl. There's some part of butter or sugar that's not well emulsified inside, so when you bake it, that part will melt. So it's very important that every time we scrape down the bowl and make sure that all the ingredients are well emulsified and mixed.
Video on
Now I'll continue adding my remaining eggs. As far as this recipe goes, I think we had some question about the recipe. We'll be emailing the recipe, as well as we'll be posting it on the platform in which we're posting the video later on. So now just have a time, enjoy the lesson, and enjoy the technique. Later on, you'll get the recipe. And when you do have the recipe, you're able to watch this video again slowly at your own pace. Then you can try it at home as well. So once all my eggs are incorporated, you can see the eggs are inside. For you with the side camera. Here. I'm gonna again scrape down. Just like so. And then I can add in my dry ingredients, my flour and my baking powder. And now I'm gonna mix just until it forms a dough. So, so there's some question about the eggless. Okay, so we have some question about the eggless. This one is just a demo, so you to see how we're teaching. We have other demos coming. We will have an eggless demo in the future, but also on our APCA Chef Online, we have a completely eggless program. I've been developing an eggless program for you guys that's over 100 recipes, as well as I'm even developing a recipe that's completely vegan as well. So not only will we have eggless on our program as well, 100 plus recipes, but we'll also be doing vegan, I've been developing, and also gluten-free, low sugar, and also healthy and whole grain breads. So this will be coming to you. Don't worry, I mean, this video is just for you guys to have an idea on how we're doing, but we do have a completely eggless program that I've been putting together for our subscribers. Okay, Chef. You just mix it till it comes together as a dough, just like this. There's not so much over mixing, like it's gonna split or heat or melt. But basically, when you're doing something like this one, you don't want to mix too long. Otherwise, you're just gonna start developing some gluten inside. So all I'm doing is mixing till it comes together. You see the dough is actually gonna be very, very soft. So once all the flour is well incorporated and mixed, then we're okay. For the second. So now that our dough is finished mixing, we're going to take some parchment paper and begin to roll it out.
अकाउंट साइन इन करानी जरूरत नहीं
तो अकाउंट साइन इन करानो चेक नहीं खाली वो लोग खोलवानो जातो
नहीं
पता नहीं प्लीज तो चेंज मत करो
टाइम ही मत करो
हां ત્યાં લગાવી દેને શું બનાવે છે કે
ડો મિક્સ કરે છે ડો should be very very soft ke to
we're going to put another piece of parchment paper on top. Because the dough is soft, we can't roll directly with the rolling pin, or else the dough will stick to our rolling pin. So we're going to come and we're going to roll the dough to about 5 millimeters. Making sure the dough is nice and even. Running our hand on the top. If we feel our hand kind of going up and down, we know some spots are thicker than the others. So once we reach 5 millimeters thickness, again at home you can use a ruler. I've been doing enough that I can kind of tell by eye. So once you reach the 5 millimeters, we're going to take this, we're going to put it into the refrigerator until it firms up because it's very soft. Then we'll be able to cut it and remove it. Cassie, I have one that's already made and already cold, so we can continue on with our demo. So here is the sablé breton that's already made. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the paper from both sides gently. Refrigerate the dough until it just becomes cold. Once it's cold enough and not soft, it's up to you. It depends on the size of your dough, how cold your refrigerator is. We just want the dough to become firm because this dough at room temperature is very, very soft because a lot of butter and sugar inside. You can even leave overnight in the refrigerator. It's fine. We just want to make sure the dough is firm and cold so when we touch it, it's not very sticky. So now to bake our sablé breton, we're going to have some rings. Now this dough, we need to bake inside the ring because a high amount of butter and sugar, if I don't have something to hold the shape, it's going to become not very flat, but it's going to spread out quite a lot. So you can even cut this and bake inside of a round silicone mold as well. So I'm going to spray my rings with a little bit of oil. just so they're easier to come out later. You can also brush with oil or butter if you like. And then I'm just going to cut some of these rings and then keep inside the ring and place onto my tray. If your room is very warm and your dough begins to get soft, put it back into the refrigerator, let it get cold, then you can keep on cutting. Don't try to force the dough because it's going to start getting more soft and sticky. Now this extra dough that you have, we can take and we can roll back again. We can keep this in the freezer for a week, 2 weeks. We can keep it in the refrigerator for a few days as well. So it has a pretty shelf life, and then we can keep on reusing it. So if I wanted to use again, you just fold the dough back on itself, put the parchment paper back, and then you can roll back to the thickness that you like. Let it get cold again, and then we can continue cutting and we can make more.
What's the size of the ring?
So now I'm going to take and I'm going to bake these at 175 degrees Celsius for about 15 minutes. So that's the first part of our Saint Honoré. The next thing we're going to start doing is we're going to make the croquelin. The croquelin is the cookie that we're going to put on top of the choux pastry. Cassie, give me one choux puff, just one of the puff on the side. So you can see here, this is the choux pastry I already have pre-baked. So on the top, I have this kind of brown crackling cookie. This is the croquelin. When you put this on top of choux pastry, it helps the dough more nicely without bursting everywhere. If you bake choux pastry without the croquelin, it'll bake just fine, but it tends to burst and look a lot more rustic as opposed to very smooth. So the next thing now is going to be this croquelin cookie that I'm putting on top. So for my croquelin, again, I'm going to use a paddle attachment. I have flour, butter, brown sugar, and cocoa powder. Now I'm making a chocolate craquelin, so I'm using cocoa powder because chocolate craquelin will match the chocolate Saint Honoré. But actually, we can replace this cocoa powder with some more flour, and then we can actually add other colors as well. If I was going to make a raspberry Saint Honoré, this would become more flour, and I can actually add red color to the croquelin, and then I can make a red croquelin as well. So it's very versatile. So to begin making our croquelin, we're going to start the same way we made the sablé breton. In fact, it's the same thing, minus the egg yolks and baking powder. So we'll start by putting our butter and our brown sugar in first. And just like the sablé breton, we're going to cream it together. Now, before I had a question, someone asked, but I was in the middle of doing something. So someone asked the size of the ring. The size of the ring is relative to the size of my choux pastry. If I'm baking, I should be able to fit 3 choux pastries around the ring when I'm done. So if I have bigger choux, I use a bigger ring. This is going to be a small petit gâteau size. So I'm using a small 4.5 cm ring. But if you have a larger choux pastry, you're going to want a larger ring. So you need to put 3 around when we're done. So now I'm going to cream the butter and the sugar together. And again, I'm going to make this a little bit light and fluffy. Meanwhile, I can combine my flour and my cocoa powder together. Yes. Yes, if you remove the cocoa powder, you can use the same amount of flour in replacement. So just like before, I cream it together, become a little bit lighter in color. Then I'll add my dry ingredients inside.
वीडियो चल रही लाइव.
As you can see, our butter and our sugar have creamed together.
Also look at the mixture.
So we have our butter and our sugar that's creamed together. Okay? You can see just a little bit light, but not too much. Now we'll add in the cocoa powder and the flour. We're going to put back onto the mixer and then just combine well. Again, there's no time. We just want to make sure that everything is combined nicely. We don't see any butter or sugar that's not mixed into the flour. This one you can even do in a food processor. If you have a Packle food processor, you put all the ingredients and just blend it completely. So you just wait for everything to come together well. So just like so. Straight down the bowl. Straight down our paddle attachment. Now, just like we did with the sable breton, we're going to put this between two pieces of parchment and then roll. So we just take all of the crackling out of the bowl. We're going to put another piece of parchment paper on top. And we're going to roll this to 2 mm. Now we want this very thin. If it's too heavy, when we put it on top of the choux pastry, it's going to be too heavy to allow the choux pastry to rise nicely. So you really want to make sure you have 2 mm on the thickness for this croqueline. So once I have the 2 mm thickness, I keep this into the chiller or freezer. Minus the butter, there's nothing really that can go too bad in here, so it has a very long shelf life. I can keep this in the freezer. I mean, as long as it's wrapped, basically forever. I can keep this into the refrigerator a week, no problem. I just want to put it until it gets cold. You see right now, it's very, very soft. If I try to come and I take and I cut, I cannot cut. So basically, I just need to keep it till it gets cold enough that I can cut it. I do the choux pastry. those of you who can hear me talking to somebody off camera, that's Chef Cassie. She's helping me do this demo, so really thankful to her also. So don't mind me, I'm talking to someone in the corner, please. So now we have the sable breton baking inside the oven. Should be done in about 6 to 7 minutes. We have our croquetin is done and is gonna get cold. And now we'll start making the choux pastry. So we still have choux pastry to make. We have the ganache milieu, and we have our whipped ganache that we're going to do. So next we'll do the choux pastry.
कपकेक्स तुम्हारा कितना दिन रख सकते हैं? 15 दिन तक चलता है ना? हाँ?
So here are our ingredients for our choux pastry.
क्योंकि एक तो जो है ना 10 तारीख को दिया था वो एक पैकेट बचा हुआ है तो चलेगा ना खराब?
We're also going to have a bowl with a paddle attachment for the mixer. We're going to need a pot, a stove with a whisk to cook the choux. We have our piping bag, which will pipe the choux later. And a tray for us to pipe on and bake. So we'll just set this over here, getting ready to go in a little bit. So now to begin making our choux pastry, we're going to take a pot. We're going to put our milk, our water, our sugar, our salt, and our butter into the pot. Now, we start to cook this on the stove. So we have our eggs and our flour here. I'm gonna cook onto the stove until my water, my butter, and my milk begin to boil. So again, if you can't see into the pot, I will show you. But for our APCA Chef Online, we have all these kind of side angles, close angles of the baking, and also into the pot that you can see every single step of the way.
You can see on the side.
Sorry? You can see? Okay, good. On the side cam, fantastic. So how did this work? The same Zoom meeting has 2 angles. Thank you. I'm not very good technology. I don't know how this works. I just know the pastry here. So anyways, we're going to begin. We're going to wait for this to come to a boil. All the butter should be melted. We're going to have our flour ready because once this comes to a boil, we're going to add in all of the flour and we're going to start making our roux. Now, a roux is a common thing also used in culinary, which we use to thicken sauces. But once we add eggs into a roux, then it's going to become choux pastry. This is the same pastry we use to make cream puffs and eclairs. So you can see now the butter is melted. It's come to a boil. I'm just going to add in all of my flour, 1 shot, turn down the heat a little bit, and begin mixing. Okay, now I want to stir well, make sure that I don't have any lumps, and I'm going to cook this roux until it forms kind of a ball in the center and it doesn't stick to the pot. You can see it's already starting to happen. It's not sticking to the side, it's forming kind of a ball because my starches are gelatinizing now. Now I'm going to cook this until you can see here, I start forming a skin on the bottom of the pot. So you can see here, it's not brown, it's not burnt, but I have a skin. And now it basically comes into one mass, just like so. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the roux. We're going to place it into a KitchenAid bowl. And with a paddle attachment, we're going to start to paddle. Now, we're going to paddle a little bit, slightly cool down the roux. You'll see a lot of steam. I don't know if you can see on the camera, but right now we have a lot of steam coming out. So we don't need to paddle it till completely cool, because when the choux pastry is very cool, it becomes thicker and harder to pipe smooth, especially for something like eclairs. So we're just going to wait till the steam stops. It cools down just slightly, so I can add my eggs without cooking the eggs. Closer here. Yes. So again, while we're waiting, I guess there's a lot of questions coming. I'm sorry, there's hundreds of you and just one of me, but we will be posting this on our YouTube and our Facebook and our subscribers channel as well. And there, just like we do for our subscribers, you'll be able to go ahead and post your questions, and then I'll be able to come back and answer as many as I possibly can. My sablé breton is just about ready. I see I want a little more color, so it's been 15 minutes now. I'm just going to put in maybe another 30 seconds to 1 minute. So now we can't see a lot of steam coming out anymore. I'm just going to start adding in my eggs little at a time. Let all the eggs soak up, then I add more. Now this is basic choux pastry. So whatever you're making choux pastry for, whether it's cream puff or eclairs or this one, the process is always going to be the same. Now I just wait till everything combines well. Then I can stop the mixer. So I'll show you this one in a second, but right now our sablé breton is ready to come out of the oven. So we're going to take that out. So as you can see, our sablé breton has a nice golden color on it. And you want to make sure you bake it well, because if it's not baked well, it's going to start to collapse into the center. So now one thing we want to do is you want to remove these rings right away while it's still warm. Otherwise, when they cool down, they become a lot more crumbly and very easy to break. So right now they'll seem very soft, but when they cool off, they're going to become a dry and crumbly cookie. So you can see right here, just like so. You can see the bottom also, just a nice brown color, not too dark, but also not very, very light. Like I said, you want to bake these very well. Otherwise, they'll start to collapse right into the center, and you won't have a nice texture on your cookie. So I just set these aside to cool down. And we can continue with our choux pastry. So you can see everything has come together nicely for our choux pastry. But depending upon how much you cook the roux will affect the stiffness. As I am cooking the roux, I'm losing moisture. So the more you cook or the less you cook is going to affect the texture of your choux pastry. So actually what I'm looking so I can take this and drop, and it should form a slightly sharp V. You see I cannot get that right now. So what I can do is I can adjust this, make it a little bit more thinner using a little bit of milk. So what I'm going to do is I add a little bit of milk. And then I can adjust the consistency accordingly. And I'll show you what the consistency should look like. Now, why the consistency is very important is if it's too runny, then when you pipe it, it's not going to hold shape. If it's too thick, when you pipe it, it's going to dry very easily. And when you bake it, it's going to crack very easy in the oven, particularly for eclairs. Because I'm using the crock lid on top of this one, the cracking, it can help control. But if you're baking an eclair and your batter is too stiff, very good chance your eclair is going to crack because it's going to dry out faster. The steam will continue rising the eclair and it's going to crack from the dry skin. So now you can see I can get a nice smooth V on my choux pastry. This is what I'm looking for. Not too runny that it's not going to hold the shape, but not too dry as well.
मम्मी आप ना बैंक से मेरे में डाल दो क्योंकि
So
मेरे में
now
डिस्काउंट
we're
वगैरह
going to
भी हो रहा
scrape
है
off
कार्ड
and we'll begin piping our choux pastry.
558 का पड़ेगा मुझे सस्ता पड़ेगा and आप पे या आप भी करी हुई हो
So here I have a piping bag.
क्या देख रही हो
Fit it with a small round nozzle. It's just going to help me pipe a more even shape.
क्लास ऑनलाइन कहीं बाहर से क्लास कर दिया
फ्री क्लास है
YouTube पे देख रही हो या कैसे है
फ्री क्लास दे रहे हैं
Now again, the size of my nozzle depends upon the size of the choux pastry that I want to pipe. So I'm piping very small choux. So I'm using a very small round nozzle as well. The same about size I would use to pipe macaroons. So now we're going to begin piping the choux pastry. So the first thing I'm going to do is I show you what not to do when you're piping choux pastry. So come here. One is you're piping, and then you're trying to decorate a cupcake coming around like this. That's not how we want to pipe the choux pastry. Another one is we are piping the choux pastry, and then we just pull off like this one, eating like a kiss. Other one, you're piping the choux pastry too close to the tray, and you get a really flat disc. You don't want any of these. How I want to pipe the choux pastry is I want to hold it slightly above the tray, completely perpendicular, and I'm going to pipe without moving the nozzle. Stop, and then cut off. When we pipe, we want to give them a little bit of space in between because they're going to rise. Now, it is possible to pipe these and bake into a silicone mold as well. I'm sorry, not bake in the silicone mold. Sorry, you can pipe them in the silicone mold and freeze them and then unmold to get a very good consistency of this size. So once I have my choux pastry piped, I'm going to take my crackling, which I have now getting cold, and I'm going to cut the crackling and put the crackling on top. So here's a chocolate crackling. Now I'm going to use the smallest size cutter that I have inside of a round cutter set. It should be bigger than your choux pastry. So you should be able to take your nozzle, put it on top of the choux pastry, because you want a little bit bigger so the crackling is going to melt over the top of the choux pastry. So if I made a bigger one, I use a bigger nozzle that can cover around the choux pastry just a little bit. So my crackling is nice and cold. Thank you. So we're going to cut our crackling, and we're going to place right on top into the center of the choux pastry. Now the crackling has a lot of butter inside, so if it begins to start to get soft, you need to put it back into the chiller, or even can put it into the freezer. If your crackling is too cold and it starts to crack when you cut it, you need to get it to soften up a little bit. You don't want it to start crackling a little bit. Like if it's broken, it's not going to be nice on top of the choux pastry. So we cover all. I'll leave a few pieces uncovered that I'll bake without the crackling. So you can see also how big of an effect the crackling actually has on the choux pastry. Now when you put this on, don't press it down so it's flat. Just let it stick. Okay, so this is all I'll cover for now. The rest of these I'll bake without the crackling so we can just see the difference. So now I'm going to bake these at 180 degrees Celsius for about 16 to 20 minutes. So now that our choux pastry is inside the oven, we've made our sablé breton, we've done the crackling. We have two more components to do. One will be our ganache, and the next will be our breton. So now I'm going to show you how to make the ganache. So I have cream and egg. Milk, dark chocolate.
Martabak. Bro, martabak juga. Banyak banget ya?
And I have sugar. So again, whipping cream, milk, egg yolk, sugar, and dark chocolate to make our ganache mousse. I'm gonna have a bowl, which I'll need to use to combine some sugar and eggs. I'm going to have a sauce gun, which I'll use to fill my mold. We can just pour from a jug or we can use a piping bag, but I find this very simple. So just something to transfer into my mold later. I'm gonna have a whisk, a spatula, a pot to cook the anglaise, and the mold in which I'm going to pipe my ganache mousse. So to start off, I'm going to put my milk into a pot. My cream. Now, ganache mousse is anglaise based. Anglaise is vanilla sauce. It's the basis of pastry cream, ice cream, and of just a vanilla sauce that we use for plated desserts. So by making ganache using the anglaise method, we're going to have more of a rich and creamy ganache than if we just took some melted cream or melted milk and cream and poured into the chocolate just by itself. I'm going to take about half of my sugar and put into the pot with the cream and the milk. The other half of my sugar, I'm going to put into a glass bowl. And later I will combine with my egg. Now, sugar creates osmotic pressure, which means sugar draws moisture to itself. It's very moisture hungry. So whenever you're making a recipe that calls for anglaise, where you have to mix eggs and sugar together, we only do the very last minute. Otherwise, the eggs will start to coagulate from loss of moisture. So we're going to come we're going to put our milk, cream, and half the sugar onto a pot, and we're going to bring this just to about a boil. You can see inside my pot, right? Okay. Careful, not a really high heat, or don't cook too long, or else you're going to burn the cream, which has a lot of fat, on the bottom of the pot. Okay, so once it's almost to a boil, I'll set this aside. I'm going to add the eggs into the sugar now. I'm going to combine them together well. The sugar is just going to help keep the eggs from cooking right away once I add this hot liquid into the eggs. So now we're going to slowly add our milk and our cream, little by little, to bring the eggs up to temperature without cooking them. You see the bottom of my pot is clean. Okay? There's no kind of burnt parts or scalded milk. You want to make sure we're very careful when we're cooking so it turns out like this. Next, we're going to pour it back into the pot. And now we have to cook to 83 degrees Celsius. This is going to pasteurize the eggs and make it so it's safe to eat because there'll be no more cooking after this stage. So now we're going to go back on a medium heat, and we're going to cook to 83 degrees. I suggest you use a thermometer, but I can tell by the texture, the temperature, because it's going to start to thicken up just a little bit. But because we don't have a starch in it, like pastry cream would have, it's not going to become very thick. Also, if you see it come to almost a boil, you know you're already going to be above the 83 degrees. Okay. So now I'm going to remove from the pot. I'm going to add in my chocolate and melt all of the chocolate inside. I'm doing a very small batch. You can use a hand blender to do this as well. I'm trying not to mix too fast because with the whisk, I don't want to incorporate a lot of hair. Camera, the main camera, please. You can hear me? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Yeah. Okay. So basically, you see we have a really nice, smooth, shiny ganache. Not a lot of bubbles inside. I've filled the molds. Okay. And now I'm going to take and I'm going to freeze this ganache until it's frozen, and then I can unmold easily. Now, we'll start with our last component, which is our whipped ganache. Stay here when I let you know, then you can, I'll do assembly, and then you can give me one. So to make our whipped ganache, we're going to have whipping cream, 2 portions. We have a small portion of cream to actually make the ganache itself. We have a large portion of cream, which we'll add a little bit later. We have some glucose and inverted sugar, and some milk chocolate. So basically what whipped ganache is we're making a chocolate flavored whipped cream. So because cream needs to be cold when you whip it, you cannot whip hot cream, we're gonna make this and we're gonna actually let it sit in the refrigerator overnight. So if you're gonna do some kind of whipped ganache, you need to make it the day beforehand, allow it to sit into the refrigerator overnight so it becomes cold and slightly thickened before you whip it. So I show you how to make, but I have one that's already made yesterday. It's in the refrigerator for the whipping part. So we're going to come with our cream. We have the smaller portion of cream here. We're going to put into a pot along with our glucose and invert sugar. This is going to allow it to be a bit more softer and enhance the shelf life of our ganache. Sometimes you put glucose or invert sugar inside because they make the ganache softer by retaining moisture. And also these sugars help with the shelf life a little bit. So glucose is liquid glucose. You can find any kind of pastry store, no problem. And even most grocery stores will sell. If you can't find glucose, even light corn syrup will do. But light corn syrup tends to be a little bit more runny, so your ganache might be a little bit softer. Invert sugar. If you don't have invert sugar, you can use honey, but just know that honey will give that kind of honey taste that you have, okay? Invert sugar is just made by adding sugar and an acid, lemon juice or some other form of acid, and cooking and allowing it to cool down, which inverts the sugar, making a soft sugar that holds moisture very well. Honey is natural invert sugar. So I put my invert sugar and my glucose into the microwave just a few seconds. It's going to be easier to come out because they're quite thick. And I'm going to add into the pot along with my cream. Okay, so in here, I have my smaller portion of cream, my invert sugar, and my glucose. Here, I have a larger bowl. I'm going to add in my milk chocolate. So now I'm going to heat this up, bring it to a boil almost, pour into my chocolate and melt. Then I'm going to add in the cold cream to add in, one, to cool it down, and also my larger portion of cream is not going to change the structure of the cream by heating it up. So it'll be better for whipping. So we just heat this up. Once it starts to steam, almost comes up to a boil, I'm going to add it to my chocolate. So now I just pour all of the liquid onto the chocolate. And I'm just going to melt all of the chocolate well. So as you can see, I've melted chocolate. I made a pretty thick ganache. Now I'm going to add in the remaining cream. So I'm just going to stir slowly. Now, because a lot of liquid, I'll use a whisk. This one, because I'm going to whip it up later anyway, you incorporate a lot of air bubbles now, doesn't matter. We're going to whip it tomorrow, and it's going to incorporate a lot of air. So basically, you see it as like a really rich chocolate milk. Okay, so this is done. Now I just cover this and I'm gonna put it into the refrigerator overnight. So we just hang out. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Just kidding. So I have this already made, but this does need to sit overnight. You can't whip the hot cream. So we put it overnight. I've done this in the chiller with a minimum of 6 hours, but it's very risky, very easy. You can split. So I suggest you make this overnight. If you forget to do the very first thing that you have to do. 6 to 8 hours, it should be able to whip up, but you have to be very, very careful. In that case, if you did do something like this, you forgot to make, I wouldn't heat the cream in the pot. I would melt the chocolate first in the microwave, warm the cream just a little bit, and then make the ganache with melted chocolate and slightly warm cream, and then add the cold cream inside. It'd be easier for you to cool down, and within about 6 to 8 hours, you can still use your whipped ganache. It's happened to me before that I forgot to do it, and then I had to do like this. Sorry? I'm using whipping cream. Okay. So that is our choux pastry. So you can see the choux pastry now. Perfect timing. So our choux pastry is done. You can see the ones that have the crackling are very nice and domed and not smooth. We call it crackling because they crack. But you can see the ones that I didn't put the crackling on, they kind of puff up and they break because there's nothing that's going to hold that kind of skin together. So with crackling and without crackling. So these are cooling down. When you break the choux pastry on the inside, it should be hollow like this. This is going to give us a lot of space for us to put a lot of cream on the inside. So you want to bake it just nicely. If you over bake it, this is going to become very thick shell. It won't be nice to eat, and you won't have a very nice hollow structure inside. If you take your choux pastry out and they begin to collapse, you didn't bake long enough, the structure hasn't formed yet, and that pocket on the inside, they begin to collapse. But with or without the crackling, you'll still have an empty center. Just without the crackling, they don't look as nice and as perfect. So we'll set these aside to cool down. And now we can actually begin assembling our final product. Give me the trick of the final product stuff. Keep the ganache for you since I have a freezer first. I'll let you know. I need to whip this ganache first. Okay. So here you can see I actually have pre-made that are already cooled down and everything. This is my sablé breton that I baked. Just like the ones I baked earlier. This is my choux pastry I pre-made, has already cooled down as well. And I have 4 pieces of choux pastry for 1 Saint Honoré. Just to show you also, as this cools down, you can see it becomes very kind of crumbly. So this is the texture of the sablé breton. So now to begin assembling, we're going to start whipping up the whipped ganache that I already have pre-made. So here, this is the same ganache I just made, but I made this one last night. You can see it's thickened up quite a lot because the cream becomes cold and thick, and the chocolate slightly sets a little bit. So now I'm going to put this into a mixing bowl with a paddle attachment. And I'm going to begin to whip until it becomes stiff and pipeable. Now, meanwhile, we're going to put a little hole in our choux pastry. that we can pipe inside. So we just take another round nozzle, and I'm just going to poke a little hole inside the choux pastry, or even we can use a knife as well. Something just to make a little hole in the bottom where I can fill with some whipped ganache. So just like this. We just need some place that I can put the piping bag. Now guys, thank you for hanging in there. It's already been about an hour we're going, so those of you who stayed, thank you very much. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell over there. Just kidding, I dream of being a YouTuber. No, but anyways, thank you for watching. We're getting close to the end now. And again, this video will be available to you guys on our YouTube channel and our Facebook group as well, for the subscribers and the non-subscribers as well. And there you can ask some questions, and I'll do my best to try to get back to as many of the questions as possible. Meanwhile, I also have things going, so if you ask a question and I don't get back to you right away, just hang in there. I'll get around to you guys. Same thing for our subscribers. They know already. Whenever they ask a question on our closed group, we get to them, we answer all their questions.
Awesome.
Thank you guys very much. Thank you for coming. It's my pleasure and joy to teach. I really like doing this, and I really like sharing it with you guys. You know, it's thanks to a teacher of mine that I'm doing what I was doing today. So I find teaching is very important. And I really like to give back. Thanks for also my teachers who taught me how to do pastry. And were very, very patient with me, trust me. So now we have the hole inside of our choux pastry. We have our whipped ganache. I'll show you this in 1 second. So let me do a bit of a whipping, okay? Mix it well. So kind of this texture, it's soft and pipeable, smooth, but it's gonna hold shape. We call this like a medium peak. Okay? Too much, and it's gonna become kind of split, which you don't want. If you over whip cream or whip ganache, we can fix it by adding a little bit more cream and then whipping a little bit more. It is smoothen out. So now we can begin finishing our Saint Honoré. So I have 2 piping bags. 1 piping bag I'm going to use for filling the small choux. So we'll put a little bit into a piping bag. Now I'm going to cut a small hole in the piping bag here, just like so. And I'm going to begin piping. I'm just going to fill these up with the whipped ganache, like so. Okay. You can also do this with ganache milieu that you have left, but that's a little bit more liquid. Up to you. If I use the whipped ganache, the ganache milieu inside here, it's going to be very rich because the ganache milieu is very heavy and creamy. If I use the whipped ganache, I'll have a bit more of a lighter product overall. So it's up to you what you're looking for. Because this is cream and chocolate, you want to work with this quite fast. If it's a bit warm, the heat from my hand is actually going to melt it, and it's going to become very liquid. So if you see your whipped ganache starts to become very liquid, it's probably because it's becoming too warm. Cool. We have a little rupture here. No problem. Okay, 1 second, guys. Make a new piping bag. You guys? Okay, even check, not perfect. So we come in, we just make a new piping bag. And we can continue. All right, so now that we have all our choux pastry done, it's time for us to finish everything up. Chef Cassie, can I have the frozen ganache mousse, please? So we have the ganache mousse that we made earlier. It's now frozen. Thank you, Chef Cassie. Inside the sphere mold, we're just going to unmold and place into the center. This is the ganache that we made that had the anglaise sauce inside. So now we have more of our whipped ganache. We're gonna fill a piping bag with a star nozzle, the kind that we can use for making eclairs. We cut our bag first. And we start filling this bag with the remaining whipped ganache. So now we're just gonna pipe a little bit on the top. This is gonna help stick our choux pastry. And then we're gonna start taking 3 pieces of the choux pastry and placing around. So someone asked earlier the size of the ring. You can see now, again, I'm just trying to make the size of my choux pastry in the ring so we can fit 3. So this is what I was mentioning beforehand about putting 3 choux pastry onto 1. So now that I have my 3 filled choux, I'm now gonna pipe the ganache on this side. So I'm gonna pipe in between the choux all the way up to the top. So now it's time for me to just finish. So here I have one remaining shoe for each of them. Now I'm going to decorate with a little bit of a logo. So I'm going to cut actually a little hole here in the top where I can put my logo. And now I'm going to take and place the one shoe right onto the top. Just like so. Oh, one more shoe. I'm going to take a little bit of glucose. So I'm going to add a little dab of gold leaf. Use the glucose to stick the gold leaf. And then finally, our logo. Again, thank you, Chef Cassie, for the nice logo there. So our Saint Honoré is now finished. And that will be the end of our live demo. So thank all of you for, turn this one up, wait. Thank all of you guys for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed. Again, thank you for sticking to the end. And this is just a bit of a taste of what we're doing on the APCA Chef Online. So our classes we conduct just like this, except for we're using a professional video team. So instead of having these kind of angles and phones, we have a professionally edited video that's always available for you anytime. All the close-up shots and all the baking shots will be available. And also, just like this one, we'll be posting on our Facebook group to answer answer questions. And just like we do for our APCA Chef Online subscribers as well, with all of them, we answer their questions for every single topic.
Anybody have a question apart from recipe? Anybody have a question?
Apart from the recipe, does anyone have any kind of questions that I can answer for you guys, maybe about our program or how APCA Chef Online works? These you need to keep inside the refrigerator. The shelf life's about a day or so before they get soggy.
Any question? We'll take just 1 minute. Anybody have a question? So they have 1 more minute. If they have a question.
Yes, about the
Talk
program.
about recipe.
Sorry?
About the program.
Okay.
About the program?
Richa Sharma is asking about, can you tell me how does this program work out?
So we, just like, we have most kind of programs you see online nowadays, everyone's going online. So we have a website that'll give you access for 1 year access for one solid price. You'll be able to get access to all of our recipes, depending upon the program that you're doing. So you'll have 1 year access to all of our programs. And also you'll have access to our Facebook subscribers group. So in our subscribers group, we have topics for forums. So our students go ahead, they ask questions, same thing like we're asking here, what size ring do you want to use? We'll normally cover this in the video. But when someone has some kind of problem or question, or they don't know what to replace with or how they can find, you have your own special group. Not only are you able to access the videos, but you're able to access us as well. We're on that group almost every single day answering questions and giving feedback, as well as we're doing live Q&A theory classes as well. in our master class, we're still in the filming of master classes, but we have world pastry champions, we have master bakers, we have other master pastry chefs. So we'll be having very well-known names, world championships, MOFs, master chocolatiers, master bakers. This is what we'll be doing for the master class as well. So just like we have our Asia Pastry Forum, we're trying to bring that to everyone as well using our master class series.
They gave for the question about the program, about the recipe. We could upload the video. We can ask the time.
Yes. Again, if you have any question about the actual product itself, we'll be uploading the video. You can post your questions there. I'll be going on and I'll answering as many of them as I possibly can.
I'll join you for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Is it possible to get the equipment set up for cooking?
Yeah.
I can't answer that one.
I think I should be able to answer the question. A very good afternoon to everyone. My name is Chef Niklesh. You must be receiving some of the mails from my side as well. Just to let you know that this program starts from basic to the most advanced level. The idea is that, okay, whatever you learn, you don't pick up a recipe, but you actually pick up a program where you start learning from breads to chocolate to French pastries to cake designing, and then slowly the program grows up. So it may happen that you guys are students or teachers or professional, home baker or housewives, learning the things for your own part. But please do understand that we are all teachers. We are all chefs here. So this program will go with its own way and speed. We will be more than happy to help anybody in case you have a problem about ingredients, about equipments, or any question about that part, because we have schools in Malaysia, India, Indonesia, Singapore, Philippines. So we will ensure that if you are based in India, there are chefs from India who will be able to help you out. Okay. Apart from that, I think anybody have a question? Sure. So thank you very much once again, Chef Angelo. I think you want to have a close and
Yes, thank you. Yes, so like Chef Nicholas said, next week we'll be continuing these kind of demos for you on different variety of topics, culinary, eggless, other pastries as well. And we'll try to keep this going, to keep interactive. And again, this is just a taste of what you'll be getting on the APCA Chef Online. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, if you have some kind of questions, we'll be posting this. Post your questions on there. I'll be happy to try to do my best to answer as many questions as possible.
Is everything available at the same time?
So we do have an offer at the moment. Right now we have our full-time program that we're offering our pastry as well for 200 USD for 1 year subscription. We also have our 1 year eggless certificate program, which is all eggless and vegan. So this means no egg, no gelatin for our eggless products. And our vegan, completely vegan, no honey, no eggs, no gelatin, no milk, no cream, no butter. So we do have separate programs going on. Each of them is about 200 USD for a year. And we do have offers going on for people who subscribe for more programs at one time. And we do have group offers as well.
Does it include culinary also?
Yes, at the moment, our program does include our culinary as well. So if you subscribe for our full-time program, you'll be getting all of our 9-month pastry as well as our 9-month culinary as well.
Eggless and culinary and pastry.
Yes, correct. Oh, so yes, sorry everyone. So you will at the moment, if you subscribe now, we do have the offer that you'll 200 USD, you will be getting our eggless, our culinary, and our pastry. So right now is a really good time to subscribe, because at the moment you can get everything for one solid fee, no matter what you want to do, and you can take it at your own pace for 1 year. Okay. So again, thank you everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed, and until next time, and I hope to see you guys all on APCA Chef Online.